Hi there, and welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. Today, we're talking about something that sits a bit deeper than most people realize: the hidden parts of yourself. The bits you keep quiet. The bits you think disqualify you from being truly seen or fully loved.
Yeah, it's easy to believe that only the shiny, polished, presentable parts of you are lovable. The parts you've figured out, or the parts that make sense to other people. But there's so much more to who you are than what you show on the surface.
Sometimes, the most tender parts of us, our fears, our doubts, our insecurities, don't get a lot of light. And because they are not seen, we start to think they are not worthy of love. But they are. Just because something is quiet or hidden doesn't mean it's not real.
And it doesn't mean it's not beautiful. Or human. We all carry stories that aren't loud. Emotions we don't post online. Memories we don't share in small talk. But those things, they still matter. They still deserve care. They still deserve kindness.
And especially the parts of you that feel complicated. The parts that don't have tidy answers. The ones you're still working through. You don't need to be fully healed to be worthy. You don't need to be perfectly understood to be loved.
And I think sometimes we wait to love ourselves until we feel ready, until we've sorted everything out, until we're less emotional, less messy, less unsure. But that delay keeps us distant from ourselves. The truth is, you're already enough, even in the in-between.
Yeah, and it's often in those unseen parts, those deeply personal places, that your truest self lives. The way you quietly show up for people. The way you keep going even when no one's cheering. The way you soften when things get heavy. That's strength, even if no one else sees it.
And that strength doesn't have to be loud or visible. It doesn't need to be validated by applause or recognized in a photo. Some of the most powerful, lovable things about you are the ones that exist privately, in your thoughts, your heart, your quiet choices.
You know, I think we all carry corners of ourselves we're scared to let the world see. But just because they are hidden doesn't mean they are shameful. Just because they're complicated doesn't mean they are wrong.
Right? And maybe you don't even have to share those parts with anyone to make them worthy. Maybe it's enough to say to yourself, I see you. I accept you. I'm not going to hide you in the dark anymore. That's where the real healing begins.
And the more you can offer yourself that kind of acceptance, the kind that doesn't require explanation or performance, the more whole you start to feel. Not because anything changed on the outside, but because you stopped rejecting the parts of you that were never broken.
And it's okay if those parts still feel tender. Still feel unsure. Still feel a bit too much, or not quite enough. That doesn't make them unworthy. That makes them human. And being human was never meant to be tidy.
Exactly. We're not meant to live with only the curated bits of ourselves. We're meant to carry all of it. The beauty and the mess. The clarity and the confusion. The light and the shadows. Because that's what makes you real.
And maybe, if you can sit with those parts without turning away, without trying to edit them out, you'll start to realize they've been asking for love, not fixing. Understanding, not hiding.
You don't need to become someone else to be worthy of love. The parts of you that no one claps for, the ones you think no one would understand, those parts matter too. They are still you. And they are still worth loving.
And maybe those parts don't need to be explained to anyone else. Maybe their value isn't in how well they are understood, but in how gently you hold them. You can carry quiet pain and still be worthy of peace. You can carry uncertainty and still deserve softness.
We're so used to performing for approval, showing the best version of ourselves to be accepted. But there's something so powerful about no longer needing to perform. About saying, this is me, even the parts I'm still learning how to love.
And maybe the real work isn't about fixing who you are, but learning how to be kind to the parts that still ache. The ones that felt forgotten. The ones that were dismissed. The ones you used to hide just to fit in.
You can choose to stop hiding now. You can choose to give yourself the love you've been waiting for someone else to give. You can choose to stand beside all the parts of you, even the ones that never made it into the story you told others.
And maybe, just maybe, those hidden parts hold the most truth. The quiet resilience. The fears you faced alone. The moments you didn't give up, even when no one was watching. That's not weakness. That's something to be proud of, even if it never gets applause.
We don't need to turn every part of ourselves into something productive or inspirational. Some things are just meant to be felt, held, honored. Not everything needs a solution. Some parts just need space to exist, without judgment.
And when you begin to give yourself that space, to stop rushing your emotions, or editing your story for someone else's comfort, you start to find peace in the realness of who you are. The raw, unfiltered, honest you.
That's the version that deserves the most love. The version that doesn't have to be perfect, or confident, or endlessly strong. The version that's learning, stumbling, healing. The version that's real. That's always been enough.
So even if no one else sees it, even if no one claps or understands, those parts of you still matter. And they still belong. You still belong.
You know, I think one of the most healing things you can do is remind yourself, you don't need to be visible to be valuable. Your worth isn't measured by how many people understand you, or how often you're seen. Sometimes, the most meaningful love is quiet, and it starts with you.
Yes. And healing doesn't always look like big, dramatic changes. Sometimes it's just sitting with yourself in stillness, choosing not to abandon who you are, especially when it feels tempting to.
And giving yourself permission to stay soft. To not have all the answers. To not be okay all the time. There's strength in allowing space for all of it. The softness. The confusion. The quiet hopes you haven't said out loud.
Because even those hopes, the ones you've buried, the ones that feel too fragile to speak, deserve your tenderness. Deserve your protection. They don't have to be shouted or proven. They just need to be honored.
And the beautiful thing is, you get to honor them in your own way. No one else has to understand your process. No one else has to validate your inner work. It's yours. And that makes it sacred.
And the fact that you've carried these parts of yourself quietly for so long. That says something about your strength. About your heart. About how deeply you care, even if you've never had the words for it.
Yeah. It's easy to think that silence means invisibility. But your quiet experiences, your quiet growth, they are real. They've shaped you. They've softened you. And that softness is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to protect.
So much of healing is just unlearning the idea that only our visible progress counts. That only the parts of us that others understand are valid. But there's so much dignity in the parts no one sees. The parts that still show up. The parts that keep hoping.
And the truth is, we all have those places inside of us, uncertain, unfinished, unnoticed. But they don't make you less. They just make you human. And every part of your humanity is worthy of compassion.
Especially the parts you've been told are too much, or not enough. They are still part of your story. Still part of your becoming. And they are still, always, worth loving.
So if there's a part of you you've kept hidden, maybe out of fear, maybe out of shame, let this be your reminder, it's still part of you, and it's still worthy. Not just of tolerance, but of tenderness. Not just of space, but of love.
You don't have to wait until everything makes sense to start being gentle with yourself. You don't have to be finished to be lovable. You already are, right here, as you are, with all the parts that are seen and unseen.
Thanks for spending this time with us. We hope it gave you a little space to breathe and maybe a little softness to take with you into your day.
This is the British Accent Podcast, and we'll be back soon, holding space for everything you are and everything you're still becoming.